Hello and welcome to another episode of Victor's Corner. I am your host, Victor Omoayo, one half of the Codex Prime podcast, and today is Tuesday, April 17th, 2018, and I am here doing the solo mission this week as Carl Byrd will be attending tonight's SmackDown Live event at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in downtown Providence, Rhode Island, and as well as a few other cats that have guested on the show from the Wrestling Fantasy Warfare Facebook group, Adrian Price, among others. So hopefully tonight's show will be a good one. I'll be tuning in after tonight's episode of Victor's Corner, and I'll hold the fort down in the meantime. And speaking of wrestling, since we're on the subject, we might as well get into it here. We got Kyle Chapman, who's joining us here. Thank you for joining us, sir. AKA one of the biggest Roman Reigns fans out there next to Adrian Price, but unfortunately that might change in the coming weeks once Brock Lesnar beats the brakes off of Roman Reigns in Saudi Arabia at the Greatest Royal Rumble on April 27th on the WWE Network. That's going to be terrific. But yeah, since we're talking about wrestling, real quick, Tonight's event at SmackDown is going to be the second night of the WWE Superstar Shakeup, in which case different wrestlers from Raw and SmackDown are going to be switched on both shows. So formerly Raw SmackDown superstars will show up on tonight's SmackDown event, and just like last night, where SmackDown stars, former SmackDown stars, showed up on last night's episode of Raw. And yeah, what's up, man? And looking at the Superstar Shakeup from last night, I was chiming in on the Wrestling Fantasy Warfare group on Facebook, and I shared the collective sentiment was that it was pretty disappointing. It was a pretty disappointing night of shakeups on last night's episode of Raw. The first person coming up from SmackDown was the U.S. champion Jinder Mahal, aka Trashbag Mahal, aka Jobber Mahal, aka the guy who should never have been the WWE champion. But thankfully, he is no longer a title holder because he did defend his U.S. title against Jeff Hardy, who returned from injury to the ring last night, and he actually won the United States Championship from Jinder Mahal. So maybe they'll start a little feud or a little program from here on out. But hey, it's actually pretty cool because now Jeff Hardy is a Grand Slam champion in the WWE, having won the Intercontinental Championship, the Tag Team Championship with his brother Matt, and of course the WWE Championship back in, I want to say, 2009 or so. So hey, another Grand Slam winner is in the books. And besides Hardy, there were a couple other call-ups that I'm trying to recall from SmackDown. Let me see. There was the Riot Squad. They made their appearance on Monday Night Raw. It's going to be interesting to see them interact with the rest of the women's roster on Raw. I think now that the Riot Squad has been transitioned to Raw, perhaps the two remaining members of Absolution will join SmackDown. That's Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. And in that wise, that might be sowing the seeds for a potentially interesting storyline. Since Paige had to retire from in-ring action and she's now the SmackDown GM, perhaps she might show a little favoritism towards her Absolution members, Deville and Morgan, or rather Deville and Mandy Rose. And perhaps that might cause some contention among the SmackDown women's roster. Maybe Paige might be a little heelish, maybe a little tweener, where she's fair to everyone else, but she shows obvious favoritism towards her Absolution members. So that might have some interesting implications moving forward. Also, the hyped up storyline of last night's episode of Raw. You had a 10-man tag team match with The Miz, who was drafted to SmackDown, and The Miz Taraj, and a couple other people I forget, versus some baby faces, among them Bobby Lashley, Finn Balor, and a mystery call-up from SmackDown, which turned out to be Bobby Roode, the glorious one. He's from SmackDown, but now he's on Raw. That's my that's my assessment of that. I say because not that I'm against Bobby Roode because he is a talented performer and he was a great heel on NXT, but since he showed up on the main roster, he hasn't really shown much of a personality beyond a great entrance theme that everyone sings along to and coming out in Ric Flair style robes, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all he's done besides win the U.S. Championship in a rather unmemorable reign. So I hope that now that Jinder's on, I mean not Jinder, well now that Bobby Roode is on Monday Night Raw, perhaps he can bring out that heelishness, that douchebaggery that we've seen so much of in NXT, because he was an effective heel, someone who was exceedingly arrogant, someone who acted like his booty didn't stink. And you came out in three-piece suits, looking dapper, and just being so arrogant. Just lording his talent over everyone else. And we need to see that Bobby Roode. We need to see that arrogant side of him because as a babyface, he's pretty vanilla. And Bobby Roode is just way too talented to just be another face on the main roster. So hopefully, him being on Raw will allow him to bring out that heelishness that we've been craving since he's been called up from NXT. And Eddie Ortiz, thank you for joining us, as well as John Haponic, the supervillain. Eddie Ortiz just chimed in. He says that Road needs a heel turn. I agree. And Black Lesnar is still boring as hell. Black Lesnar, of course, he's referring to Bobby Lashley. You know what? I mean, and I'll agree to a certain point. I mean, Eddie, you did leave a interesting comment on last night's thread of the Superstar Shakeup on Raw on the Fantasy Warfare Facebook group, where you said that that Bobby Lashley's most memorable moment in his first run in WWE was representing Donald Trump at WrestleMania 24 or 25 in like a hair versus hair match. Bobby Lashley, he's a primetime talent. I mean, he does have the skills to be a main eventer. I think he was a TNA World Heavyweight Champion shortly before he got re-signed with WWE. I think he does have potential to be someone special. I mean, he does have main event potential if they allow him to show more of a personality. I don't know how he is as a heel or a face, but hopefully he can show some adequate personality, because if he's just showing up, just wrestling, and he's just not really building a character that we really care about, then he might as well be Apollo Crews, the original version 1.0, and then Apollo Crews might be Bobby Lashley 2.0. If you put them together, can you tell them apart? I don't know, but Bobby Lashley does have potential to be a huge star. The headband, I mean the headband, I don't know. Maybe he can just put his name on it, and then they can sell hotcakes on the WWE Shop Zone or whatever. I don't know, but but he does need to show more personality, and hopefully we'll get to see more of him in action, and he can develop more of a character moving forward. I'd hate to see him, be put with Titus Worldwide. I don't know, or maybe if he gets put with them, if that ever happens, maybe he can give them the added push that they need to really make it, as credible faces or heels. But yeah, man, that's pretty much my take on the Superstar Shakeup so far. Hopefully tonight's episode of SmackDown will yield better results, because thinking about last year's Superstar Shakeup in WWE, SmackDown definitely got the short end of the stick in terms of real picks. Raw got the lion's share of the good prime talent, so maybe we'll see some more call-ups from NXT. I'm hoping that we do see Andrade Cien Almas on the main roster on SmackDown, because with Zelina Vega, he can be a top flight heel. If not in the main event, then definitely upper mid card. Who else could be there? Well, since Authors of Pain is on Raw, maybe we can see Sanity on SmackDown as well. Although I really can't picture Vince McMahon really using sanity to the best of their abilities. I mean, I really like Eric Young. Nikki Cross can be a really uh, a huge wild card in the women's roster on SmackDown. Alexander Wolf and Killian Dane or Big Damo. They could probably tear it up in the tag team division. And Eric Young can be really compelling, when he needs to be. But I really don't see Vince McMahon giving them that real push to make the fans really care about them beyond Full Sail University's audience. So, if they do get drafted to SmackDown, then I'm fingers crossed for them because they deserve to be really successful. And the SmackDown tag team division really does need some more meat on the bone because right now we have the Bludgeon Brothers dominating. And I think that the world has seen enough of Usos versus New Day matches, as awesome as their chemistry is in the ring. We really don't need to see those two teams mix it up anytime soon. Just separate them for a while, let some other new, fresh tag teams come in the mix and go after those tag team titles. So I could see Sanity being a credible threat. And I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping Vince doesn't ruin them, but time will tell. He managed to ruin Vince McMahon ruined Shinsuke Nakamura for a while, but hopefully we can see more of that. More of a positive turn for Nakamura as well. A heel Nakamura, I think, is going to be something real special. Provided that, Nakamura steps his in-ring game up on the main roster instead of, just coasting, And, oh, man. Oh, that stinks. So Eddie just left a comment on the chat. He says that that SmackDown unfortunately broke up Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable as a tag team. So Chad Gable's going to Raw. And I guess that leaves Shelton Benjamin all by himself. I don't know. Hopefully they won't let Shelton Benjamin revert to the gold standard gimmick that he had in his last run. Shelton Benjamin, again, another prime athlete. Personality-wise, he kind of personality-wise, I guess, fans. He does have a decent following. I remember in his main roster, in his first run in WWE, he definitely had the respect of the fans for being a credible and talented athlete. But as far as personality goes, hopefully he can develop a little more of one, and show us a little more range than just highly talented and accomplished athlete. No gold hair because we don't need to see Shelton Benjamin, break out the dye, or the bleach, if you will. We don't need to see that. Just Shelton Benjamin, the wrestling machine. I know the wrestling machine gimmick was taken by Kurt Angle and probably Taz. He was a suplex machine, but I can see that Shelton Benjamin, the wrestling machine, just intense, banging matches throughout. I can see them pushing that, and then he can be a real solid upper mid carder, and who knows, maybe he can be pushed to the main event. Hey, if it worked for Jinder, then I can definitely see Shelton Benjamin mixing it up with AJ Styles. That could be some real fire right there. And yes, Carl, I agree. Do not, under any circumstances, bring back Mama Benjamin, aka Shelton Benjamin's mom. I forget the name of the actress who played her. I think she was on some sitcoms in the 90s, I want to say, like the Big Sassy Black Mom. I forget, but yeah, that was an extreme embarrassment back in the day. I cringed, and that really set black wrestlers back a couple years, at least in my view, because that was not cool. Yeah, Thea Vidali or Thea Vidal. Yeah, I think that's the name of the actress. But yeah, man, SmackDown Live at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. Hopefully, it'll be a good show. I am curious though. I want to know if Carl or Eddie or Adrian can take pictures of the SmackDown Live crowd, because from what I hear, SmackDown Live attendance is usually less than Raw, lower than Raw's, to the point where the hard camera side has rows upon rows upon rows of empty seats. So they pretty much move everyone to 2/3 of the arena to make it look like a full crowd, even though it's really not. So hopefully somebody can take a picture of that and send that to me, and so I can see like what the crowd is like tonight's audience. Thank you, Carl. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the wrestling front. And I actually got a couple of movies that I'll review as well as some headlines. First movie that I'll talk about is a movie that is still playing in theaters. It's been playing in theaters for the last couple of weeks or so, and it's an excellent horror film. And it's directed by John Krasinski and co-written by John Krasinski. Also stars Emily Blunt and Millicent Simmons and Noah Jupe, and it's called A Quiet Place. Yes, A Quiet Place is an excellent 90-minute horror film. And it is pretty. I would say it's my favorite film of the year so far. Yes, it definitely it edged out Black Panther, but in my view, that's a testament to the quality of A Quiet Place. This film, it takes place in the post-apocalypse, if you will, where basically humanity has been devastated. Much of humanity has been killed off, it seems, because of these monsters. Their origins are unknown. We don't know if they're monsters or aliens. We don't know where they come from. But what we do know is that these monsters are extremely vicious. They cannot be killed easily, and they hunt exclusively with sound. So the monsters are completely blind. So they hunt by sound, but they can hear the most minute sound from a great distance. So if you like clear your throat, or if you're even scribbling on a piece of paper with a pencil, or if you drop a pin, literally, then those monsters can hear you from a distance, and then they'll zoom, run up in your shit like the Flash, and then they'll just straight disembowel you, straight take you apart, straight murder you 6 ways from Sunday. And so because of how powerful and dangerous these monsters are, and because of the fact that they can hear sound even to the most minute pin drop, this family, played by John Krasinski, the Abbott family, John Krasinski plays this guy named Lee, and Emily Blunt plays his wife Evelyn, and their 2 kids. Everything that they do, they have to be as absolutely quiet as possible, even quieter than church mice. So even the most minute sound, they have to take great pains to avoid making, even by accident. So things that we take for granted, or things that we don't think about every day, like eating food on plates using silverware, they can't do that. They have to eat with their hands and use like giant cabbage or lettuce leaves and eat with their hands, so they won't make any noise. If they need to pour water, they have to do it extremely quietly. They can't watch TV. They can't listen to any radios, but if they do, then there's a part in the movie where John Krasinski is in a basement, and he's taking great pains to soundproof it just enough so we can actually like listen in on a radio to pick up any other survivors. When they're walking on the street, or they're walking on dirt roads, they have to lay down some grains, some soft grains, so they can muffle their footsteps. When they walk on streets, they have to walk, pretty gradually, and slowly enough. They can't run, so they have to walk either barefoot or wear the softest sole shoes possible that don't make any footsteps. So basically, everything they do, they have to be completely silent to the letter. And which kind of makes you wonder, what happens if they got to use the bathroom? What happens if they fart, or what happens if they take a deuce, or go number one? I don't know, man. It's just certain things that they've got to really take account of in order to survive. And in this film, they're about 400 and some odd days into this post-apocalypse, and they're trying to find. And John Krasinski's character, he's trying to find ways to defeat these monsters. He's trying to research ways how he can actually defeat them. And the film is just absolutely terrific. Like, first of all, John Krasinski, he's a fantastic director. Who knew that Jim from The Office had those skills? But what was interesting is that you see his character and Emily Blunt's character, who's very pregnant, And so childbirth is anything but a quiet experience. So that alone is like the ticking time bomb throughout the majority of the film, because you don't know how that's going to play out, if and when it happens. Seeing how they interact, and seeing how this family converses with each other via sign language, and how they communicate was rather interesting, and it added to the suspense of the film. Millicent Simmons, who plays the youngest daughter, Reagan, she's deaf, so she wears a hearing aid, and so whenever her hearing aid is off, or whenever the camera cuts to her perspective, you don't hear anything. You don't hear any sound. But when the camera cuts to another character, you hear ambient noise from their environment, and then when it cuts back to her, all the sound goes out again. So that's a very interesting and very creative way of conveying sound design in the film. The pacing of the film, A Quiet Place, was in my view perfect. There was no fat to trim in this film. There were no wasted moments. So everything that happened from the opening credits to the closing credits had a purpose. There were no scenes that slowed down the pacing of the film. Everything was well edited. So and what added to that excellent pace was that everything was told visually through visual storytelling. So you see them conversing in sign language, or you see objects that they're looking at, whether it's like bulletin boards or newspapers or things in their environment, like like certain like light bulbs, or that change color that might signify danger, or or it's just like or certain shots from their perspective that pretty much conveyed like what all the information that you really needed to know about those characters and what they were going through. And also too, I gotta say, like Emily Blunt, like this was a great performance from her, because she's always been a terrific actress, and she's always been rocking it in the sci-fi genre, and A Quiet Place is no exception. And seeing what her character goes through, seeing the steps that she takes to look out for her kids, is just completely breathtaking. And in fact, there's a scene where she is in grave danger from these monsters that kind of get a general sense of her location, and just seeing how that scene plays out. And I don't want to give out any details. I kind of held my breath throughout most of that sequence, and also seeing John Krasinski's character and how he interacts with the younger son, and how through their interactions they explain the more of the rules of this world that they live in, was also pretty fascinating. And John Haponic leaves a really good question too. That kind of bugged me a little. It says, John asks, "Why get pregnant during the apocalypse?" And you know what? I had that exact same question, watching A Quiet Place. I mean, and it definitely added to the tension of the film, and it made their situation that much more horrifying, because as I said earlier, childbirth is not a quiet experience. And so, on the one hand, it's like I kind of understand why they're pregnant, considering what happens in the opening sequence of the film. And this family's going through grief, and just still trying to overcome this deep-rooted tragedy. But at the same time, it's like, in the post-apocalypse, when you're living in a world where monsters can pick up the most faintest sound, wherever you're at, you might as well wrap it up. And more to the point, if you are having sex in the post-apocalypse with those sound-sensitive monsters running around, I mean, I don't know. Like if you're doing the wild thing, if you're knocking the boots, I mean, if you're in the moment, right? If you're caught up in the moment, you might not help yourself, but you might make those noises of ecstasy and pleasure, and the next thing you're getting it in. Next thing you know, boom, you get your chest caved in or slashed or disemboweled, and I don't know, but it's a pretty it's a pretty fine tightrope that you got to walk in that case. You know, is it worth the risk? I don't know. You tell me. But A Quiet Place, though, like I said, it's an excellent horror film. It's 90 minutes long, no wasted movements. I get the sense that John Krasinski, I don't know if he's a video gamer or a gaming fan, but he might. I could tell that his film is inspired in part by The Last of Us, which is a great video game. I can't wait for The Last of Us Part 2. I don't know if it's coming out this year or next year for the PS4, but that's probably my most anticipated title. But A Quiet Place, in terms of its atmosphere and its sense of dread and its, somewhat depressing tone, it does remind me a lot of The Last of Us. And and maybe this film is the closest we can see to a Last of Us adaptation on film, because with the track record of video games on film, they're pretty much consistently terrible across the board. So A Quiet Place might be our best bet. But in any case, if you're a fan of horror films, suspense, I highly, highly recommend you check out A Quiet Place. It is in theaters now, well worth the ticket price. I can't wait for it to come out on Blu-ray, because I really will add it to my collection, and I will watch it again, because there's just so much I love about it visually, in terms of editing, the excellent sound design, and the performances across the board are terrific. So check it out. A Quiet Place is in theaters now. And so before I get to my second film, which is a doozy, I'm going to get into some news and headlines of this week. And I begin with two rather sad headlines here. First one is the passing of Oscar-winning director Milos Forman, who passed away last Friday at the age of 86. Milos Forman was the two-time Academy Award-winning director of such films. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, starring Jack Nicholson in 1975, and one of my favorite films, Amadeus, in 1984, with F. Murray Abraham, who also won an Oscar for this film. Milos Forman, he in addition to these Oscar-winning films, he also directed a few films in his native Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia. He directed Loves of a Blonde and The Fireman's Ball, both films which are part of the Czech New Wave. In addition to well-regarded films in the United States, such as Hair in 1979, The People vs. Larry Flint in 1996, starring Woody Harrelson, Man on the Moon, he also directed, starring Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman, and Goya's Ghosts in 2006, starring Natalie Portman and Javier Bardem. A highly talented director. I've never seen People versus Larry Flint, but that's one that I've been meaning to watch for some time now. Woody Harrelson plays the title character. Man on the Moon I haven't seen, but I hear Jim Carrey was awesome in that movie as Andy Kaufman. And I think there's a documentary on Netflix about the making of that movie itself. So Milos Forman, 86 years old, he had a great run, two classic films. In fact, I watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest the other day, and it's actually one of three films in the history of the Oscars to win the Big Five Academy Awards. It won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay, original or adapted. So that's one of three films to win the Big Five Oscars. The other two being It Happened One Night, starring Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert in 1934, and The Silence of the Lambs in 91, starring Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. So yeah, big loss, but he's left behind some true classics. Milos Forman, and the second loss that has happened this past Sunday was the late Arlie Ermey, who passed away Sunday at the age of 74. He was best known for playing Gunnery Sergeant Hartman in the Stanley Kubrick film Full Metal Jacket, which features one of the most memorable opening scenes in any film, where his character, who's a drill sergeant, and as he was in real life, dressing down the recruits in just completely and just memorable and hilarious and shocking detail. The interesting thing about that opening scene in Full Metal Jacket is that half the dialogue that he came up with was off the cuff, just improvised. Probably some stuff that he said to real life recruits at some point. And originally, Ermey, he was a consultant on the film. He was just an advisor. So I guess they cast someone else to play the drill sergeant. But Ermey was so good and so into the role that Stanley Kubrick decided to cast him instead. And he was a big part in making Full Metal Jacket a memorable film. Ermey, in addition to this film, he was also featured in many other films, such as Toy Story, The Frighteners, Seven, and many others. So yes, rest in peace to both men who left their mark in cinema. And also, we have some other news here on the comics front. Speaking of DC Films, DC Films' Birds of Prey film adaptation has finally hired a director for that project. DC Films has hired Kathy Yan to direct the Birds of Prey adaptation, which will star Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. This will be Kathy Yan's first big-budget feature. Her only previous film was the 2018 Sundance Jury Prize winning movie Dead Pigs, which I've never heard of, but okay. She will be the second female filmmaker to helm a DC EU film after Patty Jenkins, who directed Wonder Woman. And hey, you know what? It's cool. Hopefully, Kathy Ann will stay in the director's chair and not, find herself on a revolving door of directors, much like the Flashpoint film has seen. With Kathy Yan directing this big budget film from a major studio, DC, Warner Brothers and DC Comics, it does continue an interesting trend I've seen of independent and low budget filmmakers, helming these big budget Hollywood projects. Like when you're helming, like you have these directors, like for example, Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, this directorial duo. They've directed such small time and memorable films as Half Nelson with Ryan Gosling, Sugar, Mississippi Grind with Ben Mendelsohn and Ryan Reynolds. They're like indie darlings, if you will, and their films are terrific. And it's interesting to see them go from like low budget independent features shot locally to like these huge mainstream tentpole studio releases. And in Bowden and Fleck's case, they're directing the upcoming Captain Marvel film. And then you have Ryan Coogler, who directed Black Panther. Before that, he directed Fruitvale Station and Creed. And then you have Ava DuVernay, who directed Selma, I Will Follow, Middle of Nowhere, the documentary 13th, and then she helmed A Wrinkle in Time. And I think she's going to helm The New Gods for DC. So, like I said, it's a pretty cool trend of all these low-budget filmmakers going from 0 to 60, where you have in Kathy Yan's case where she's directed one low budget feature and now she's in the big time already. So I think it's pretty cool seeing these low budget independent directors get a chance to helm something major. At the same time, though, from a business standpoint, I think it's easier to get those types of filmmakers because on the one hand, it may be easier to, kind of manipulate them and give them a studio mandated vision and, allow them enough breathing room to include their little idiosyncrasies. That's not the case all the time. Like, for example, Ryan Coogler, he directed Black Panther and made it the most distinct and memorable MCU film to date. So there's a case, and Ryan Johnson, of course, the director of The Last Jedi. His vision was far and above what anybody expected, and now he's going to helm his own new trilogy of Star Wars films. So it's not always the case where you have small filmmakers, instantly placed underneath the thumb of like the big budget executives, and they have to direct whatever they tell them to. But it's just a trend that I've always noticed. Eddie leaves a comment. Why is DC still trying to make movies? They seem better at making TV shows instead. I kind of agree. From what I hear, The Flash and Arrow, those are two, and even Supergirl, those are actually terrific shows. From what from reviews that I've heard, I haven't watched any of those shows, but I could see why the shows are more highly praised. And even going away from the Arrowverse, you have Smallville, for example, and I think Krypton just came out. John Haponic says in regards to the Birds of Prey film, I can't believe they're still making it. I agree. I agree in the sense that DCEU, they're still plugging along. I don't know how this Flashpoint movie will affect Birds of Prey, if it's going to be part of the remixed or rebooted universe of DC. But at this point, with the lone exception of Wonder Woman, DC should cut their losses and just start from scratch again and focus on strictly standalone movies and not concentrate on having to connect everything in an interconnected universe. I think DC has tried way too hard to emulate Marvel Studios' blueprint, and it's blown up in their face. But yeah, we'll see where the cookie crumbles in regards to this Birds of Prey film. I will say that I hope that it is better than a TV show, because the TV show I couldn't really get into. Another headline here: David Leitch, the director of John Wick and the upcoming Deadpool 2 and Atomic Blonde, he's going to be directing the upcoming Fast and Furious spinoff, which will star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham. The spinoff is rumored to be called Hobbs and Shaw in reference to The Rock and Statham's characters. Chris Morgan, who's written 6 of the Fast and Furious films, he's going to be writing the script for this Hobbs and Shaw spinoff, and the film is scheduled for release on July 26th, 2019. Hey, David Leitch, he's definitely a whiz when it comes to action films. John Wick, the first film, is one of my absolute favorites, as well as John Wick Chapter 2. That one was directed by his co-director of the first film, Chaz Stileski. The Fast and Furious movies, they are what they are. They're completely popcorn munching, mouth breathing entertainment. I dig them. They are what they are. I'm not expecting Mad Max Fury Road levels of brilliance. They're just simply fun films, and they do have a place. Hobbs and Shaw, or maybe Calvin and Hobbs and Shaw. I don't know, but The Rock and Jason Statham, man, you can tell that they have so much fun with these movies. I mean, with their scenes that they shared together in Furious 7 and the fate of the Furious from last year, you could tell that they're just just having tons of fun on screen, and well, what else can you say? It's Jason Statham, it's The Rock. It's not going to win any Oscars, but I'm pretty sure it will put butts in seats. It's the type of movie that MoviePass was made for, and I will be there for sure. Speaking of Fast and Furious, though, I still haven't bought Fate of the Furious. Thinking about it more, it's like, I'll buy it when it's like maybe like $5 or less. If it's like stuck in like the bargain bin at Target or Best Buy or something. Oh man. John Haponic says rubber bullets are useless against The Rock. Apparently they are, because in Furious 7, The Rock took, or was it Furious 8? See, they all blend together. The Rock took a rubber bullet square in the chest directly. He could have died. He should have died, but no, he just brushes it off like Superman. And Eddie Ortiz says, I miss when Fast and Furious was about cars and driving. Yeah, I could see that, but at the same time, it's like you can only do so much with the Fast and Furious series. With the fifth film, Fast 5, they kind of switched up the formula by making it a heist movie, which definitely gave the franchise some new life, which it sorely needed. I'm just waiting until they take Fast and Furious into space, either in space or time travel. One of the two. They might as well. They might as well, because at this point, the Fast and Furious movies are live action cartoons. Space, time travel, interdimensional travel, like Interstellar. I don't know. They might as well take it there. Now, speaking of crazy and ridiculous movies, there's one movie that I have watched, and thank you, MoviePass, because if it wasn't for the gloriousness of MoviePass, I would not have even thought of watching this movie. But I had the distinct pleasure of watching one of the most craziest and batshit unintentional comedies I've seen for quite some time, and that is Tyler Perry's Acrimony. Yes, your boy Victor Omoayo has seen a Tyler Perry movie in theaters willingly. Oh my God. Where to begin with Acrimony? Okay. You know my okay, before I get into it, you know my feelings, you know my stance and my feelings on Tyler Perry's movies. I think that he can't write or direct worth a damn. His movies are essentially all the same, extremely exaggerated, over the top, just poorly written, badly directed, hammy acting, heavy-handed moralizing, too much Medea shenanigans, like hallelujah, Jesus, oh hell no. Ugh. But Acrimony is one of Tyler Perry's Medea-free movies. But that does not mean that it is void of crazy, ridiculous nonsense. So Acrimony stars Taraji P. Henson, Lyric Bent, and Crystal Stewart. And this film sees Taraji P. Henson playing this really disturbed and mentally unstable woman named Melinda Moore. And Melinda, she's married to this guy named Robert Gale, played by Lyric Bent. And the film flashes back to when they first met as teenagers, or when they were college students. Their younger selves were played by Agiona Alexis, who plays the young Melinda, who coincidentally also plays the young version of Cookie in Empire, same actress. And Antonio Madison plays the young Robert. So they play the young versions of them. And okay, so the storyline of this film is this. Okay, so Melinda and Robert, they're married. They're married, and Robert is this aspiring inventor. He invents this. He's working on for 20 years of his life, since he was a teenager, from when he was a college student to the present day. He's been working on this self-charging battery, which kind of functions like Tony Stark's arc reactor in the Iron Man Marvel films, where it's its own self-contained power source. It's able to power up his whole house. It's able to power up like whole buildings. Like no need for electricity, no need for gas. It just powers up everything in your house. And it's this awesome invention that he's been trying to work on for the past 20 years of his life. And throughout their marriage, Taraji P. Henson's character Melinda, she's trying her best to support her husband in his single-minded endeavor. Like she's the one who she's sort of the breadwinner. She's the one who she has to hold down in this office job. She's bringing in the paychecks while her husband stays at home and works in this invention. While at the same time, for 20 years of his life, he's been trying to apply to this one tech firm that he's been trying to get his invention sold to. For 20 years of his life, okay, more on that later, and somehow throughout their marriage, Melinda just snaps. She has had enough of her husband. She goes fucking crazy, and then next thing you know, she decides to take her womanly wrath and vengeance on this guy, and shit goes all over the place that makes absolutely no freaking sense whatsoever. Okay, where to begin? with this movie. So you have the setup there. Now, watching a Tyler Perry movie, the first thing that comes to mind is the phrase, "That's not how any of this works." Every Tyler Perry movie I've seen, I've always say that phrase. That's not how any of this works. What? Okay. So how the movie is framed. The movie is framed with Taraji P Henson. She's at this psychologist's office. And this psychologist is off screen, and she's asking her questions about, what's wrong with her, what's wrong with Melinda, why she's so upset at her husband, how does she feel about all this? And Taraji P Henson, I give her credit. I give her all the credit in the world because Taraji P Henson is a fantastic actress, and in this movie, she just swings for the goddamn fences, because when she goes full tilt crazy, she goes full tilt crazy. Like she's like sitting in the psychiatrist's office, just smoking cigarettes, just chain smoking. She's just, wide-eyed, just jittery, so vengeful, just dropping F-bombs left and right, talking about this motherfucking man, I'ma get this motherfucker, I want to kill him, I gave him my life, I gave him my soul, I gave him my love, my money, my virginity, I want what's coming to me. And it's like, and she's unloading all of her crazy nonsense on the psychiatrist. And so throughout the movie, you see what Taraji P Henson is telling the psychologist. So all the events we see in the film is just Taraji P Henson, recounting what's happened. And so watching this whole film, I'm thinking to myself, okay, first of all, this is a really clumsy framing device, narratively speaking, because you have Taraji P Henson recounting this story to the psychologist. So as the movie's going along, you see scenes that obviously that her character Melinda is in. So she's talking about those scenes from her perspective. But you also see scenes with her husband, Robert, where Taraji is nowhere to be found. So there's no way Taraji can narrate those events that her husband is in if it's just her husband interacting with other characters, and Melinda's nowhere to be found. How is she narrating those parts of the story? So either she's omniscient, or it's just an example of how Tyler Perry is just incompetent when it comes to writing. Because if you have a character that's recounting a story, that character can't recount scenes in which that character is not even present. It's the same problem that we saw in Temptation, Confessions of a Marriage Counselor, where I'm watching the scene and I'm like, okay, so you mean to tell me that the main character is recounting scenes where Brandy's character is in, and even though she has nothing to do with her scenes, so how does she know what Brandy said or did? Just bad writing right there. So the framing was off. Point number one. Point number two. Okay, you have these characters as they're written. You have this guy Robert, who's this well-to-do, very intelligent guy, and he first meets Melinda as a college students. They meet in college, and they fall in love, and Melinda has a bit of a temper problem. So there's a scene in the film where Melinda she's calling her boyfriend, her then boyfriend Robert, but she doesn't hear from him. So she's like calling him up constantly, no response. So she thinks in her mind instantly, oh, this motherfucker's cheating on me. Oh, I'm not gonna be a fool. I want to see what's going on. And so young Melinda, she gets in her Jeep and she drives and she finds out where this guy lives. She goes to her boyfriend's house, which turns out to be this RV, this ramshackle RV, which is parked in this really nice looking suburban neighborhood. So in all these nice houses in this neighborhood, he's the only one who lives in an RV, which goes to show you that, he's poor and he's struggling because he can't just live in an ordinary house. He's got to live in a goddamn trailer to communicate to you, the viewer, that this guy is poor and hard up, because he can't live in a normal house and convey that same message, because that's too subtle. And so Melinda, she drives up to her boyfriend's house after not hearing from him all day. And so she gets it in her mind that this guy's cheating on her. So what she does, instead of knocking on the door, of this trailer and to find out what's going on, she rams her Jeep into Robert's trailer to the point where she overturns it. But at the same time, Melinda injures herself during the process, so much so that apparently her steering wheel hit her uterus so hard that she injured herself while overturning Robert's trailer, to the point where the steering wheel, I guess, embedded in her uterus, which explains why she can't have any kids. Melinda can't have kids because a steering wheel dug into her uterus, because she ran into her boyfriend's trailer and overturned it out of anger. Okay. I guess her Jeep didn't have any airbags. Okay, so that plants one seed as to why their relationship goes south. They can't have any kids. Okay. Here's another reason why Robert has been working on his invention of this self-charging battery for 20 years and without applying for any other job. Because there's a scene where I guess shortly after this incident, and Robert, decides, I'm never going to cheat on my girlfriend again. He drops this bombshell out of nowhere that the film provides no hints for before. Robert explains why he can't find a job, in which he tells Melinda, "Oh baby, I gotta tell you something. When I was 15, I was in a gang, and I have a record. And since I'm a felon, I can't find a job, and I can't be hired anywhere. So that's why I gotta stay home and work on this battery for 20 years while you go out and bring home the bacon." Okay. That's not how that works. I understand that the criminal justice system is extraordinarily shitty, to the point where people who come out of prison, former felons who are genuinely trying to rebuild their lives, they can't find jobs because their criminal records are held against them by the vast majority of employees. I understand that it's legal for employers to legally discriminate against felons, former felons, by having them check on applications. Have you ever been convicted of a felony, or do you have a criminal record? If you check yes, boom, they can instantly discard your application. I understand it's 10 times harder for former felons, to get jobs. But Tyler Perry expects us to believe that this guy, this supposedly brilliant Tony Stark, Bill Gates level genius, can't find a job in the tech industry. So he's resigned himself to apply to this one technology firm in his neighborhood for 20 years because he can't find any other job. He can't get into any retail jobs. He can't shop his invention to Apple, to Google, to freaking Microsoft, to any other venture capitalist firm in the country or in the world. He can't shop it to Stark Industries. He can't shop it to the Rand Corporation. Nowhere. So because he has a felony, and because he was in a gang since he was 15, so he says, he has to stay home. He has to be a stay-at-home husband and work on his battery, and that's the excuse that the film wants us to believe. And that's the second biggest reason, apart from them not being able to have kids, as to why their relationship goes south, as to why Melinda goes so freaking nuts. And so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, this is terrible writing, and And what makes it even more terrible is that, okay, this Robert guy who's been working on his battery for all that for 2 decades, applying for this company, yeah, he's a lousy husband, but he's not a lousy guy. He's not a bad guy. And throughout the film, I don't know if it's the incompetence of Tyler Perry's writing or not. I don't know if his intention was to make you angry towards the husband and feel for Melinda, but the guy, he's not a bad dude. Yeah, he's a lousy husband in the sense that he's so singularly obsessed with his invention, and he makes absolutely no efforts to find any jobs anywhere, not even something to just tide them over to help pay the bills. Yes, he allows Melinda to drain her own health to her own life insurance that she inherited from her dead mother, all $300,000 worth. By helping him buy materials and a car and all this. He bled her dry, but he's not a bad guy. Like, he only cheated on her once when they were teenagers, and that was it. He learned his lesson there. When Melinda ran into his RV, he learned that lesson quick. But but you mean to tell me that he can't find it? Oh my! It's just shockingly incompetent. That this is intelligence insulting level writing. This is intelligence insulting level writing. And then on top of that, you have Melinda. She has two sisters. Okay, two sisters named June and Brenda, and these two sisters, they're basically the exact same character. And they're never apart. There's not a scene in the movie where her two sisters are apart from each other. And in fact, they actually marry, they have two boyfriends, and they marry their boyfriends. And her sisters, Melinda's sisters, their spouses, they're always in the same scene. Every scene. It's like the husbands are symbiotes, right? Like Carnage and Venom, and the sisters are like the hosts. So they can't be anywhere without their symbiotes right behind them. Like, we are Venom, we are Carnage, or some shit. And the sisters are just so abrasive. They're just so anti-Robert throughout 2/3 of the film. They're like, Melinda, I can't understand why you let this man drain you, use you for your money, for your inheritance. This man ain't shit. Thanks to him, you lost your mom's house. You're paying all these bills. You're letting him sit at home working on all this invention. You're out there, busting your ass in this office job. You gotta divorce this man. You gotta drop this man like a bad habit. He ain't shit. All the time. And they're getting her sisters are getting inside her head, which adds to her insanity. And it's like, and you're sitting there like, oh, like what is going on? It's like, why have these two characters? Why have two sisters at all? Why not just have one sister who's completely sassy and just belligerent, and then have a husband? In fact, the husband doesn't even need to be there, because the husbands don't do anything in the film. They're just props. Okay. Okay. So as the film goes on, with Acrimony. Aside from the bad writing, you have this really drab visual style in the film. So the whole film is just awash in this really grayish, purplish tone throughout the whole film. And, you're just sitting there, and it's just a dull film to watch. No dynamic camera movements, no real editing tricks or anything. It's just blandly shot, just to give you the idea that, this film is dark, I suppose. This film is dark and it's evil, so we got to have a dark, evil, and drab visual style. Okay. So all this clumsiness aside, here's another example of how bad the writing is. So you have Robert, he's applying to this firm, the same firm, for 20 years, and wouldn't you know it, the person that becomes one of the new bosses at this firm is this woman named Diana. Diana is the same woman that Robert cheated on his girlfriend with before they got married. So before Melinda and Robert got married, he slept with this woman named Diana one time. But oh, how convenient circumstances this is, because Diana, his former jump off, his former side piece that one time, happens to be one of the big bosses at this firm who just so happens to catch wind of Robert's brilliant battery invention, who just so happens to give him the opportunity that he needs, that he so desperately needs to finally get his invention off the ground and make some money and make a real impact. It's a small world after all. And the way this was set up is that apparently Robert's invention, he's been submitting this invention from this firm because this firm has this big lottery system set up. And this lottery system is where you can like send your invention year after year and hope to get called up. But if you do get that call from the firm, then you literally have to drop everything that you're doing right in that moment, and you have to go to that firm and get that interview within an hour's time. So you could be in the middle of watching your wife give birth, but if you get that phone call, see you later, honey, I got to get that job, I got to take that money. So that's how it works. And so there's a scene where Robert finally buckles down and he decides to work for his wife's sister's delivery company that they've set up with their husbands. You can see where this is going. And so the sisters and the husband tell Robert that, okay, we have this major delivery set up. It's got to be delivered at this time, and it's our biggest client ever, and he wants this delivery on the dot in this certain way. So you, Robert, you're the one lone delivery person that's got to make this happen. And if you make this delivery happen, it can bring our delivery firm to the big time, which is what we need, baby. Daddy needs a new pair of shoes, baby. You can't mess this up. You can't mess this up, Robert. Can you dig it, sucker? And so Robert, he's in the middle of the road. He's on his way to make this oh so important delivery. But lo and behold, he gets the phone call from Diana, who works at the firm, who tells him, we finally decided to see your invention. So whatever it is you're doing, drop that shit and come over right now. So what does Robert do? He just turns around the van and drives right to the firm. So thereby sacrificing his wife's brother's business for his own personal gain. But then again, he's been applying for 2 decades, so you can understand where he's coming from. He had to make a sacrifice. And so initially he gets the interview, and Robert is offered a very lowball offer of $800,000 for his invention. He turns it down flat. And man, because he turns down that money, which could have really benefited Melinda, because keep in mind, Melinda lost her mother's house in foreclosure because of her husband spending all her money on her husband working on his invention. She lost her mother's house, which was part of her inheritance, okay? So when she hears that Robert turned down all that money on top of failing to make that important delivery for his wife's husband's business, shit goes downhill from there. You see a scene where and before this happens, one of Melinda's sisters goes into Robert's delivery van, and she sees Diana's purse. She sees Diana's purse sitting underneath the seat, because there was a scene where Robert and Diana met for lunch for a business deal to make the business the deal happen. And so Melinda's sister instantly thinks, oh, she's cheating on him. He's cheating on her again. It is a hot ass mess. Edwin, Eddie. Let me tell you. So her sister finds the purse. She instantly says, "Oh, Robert's sneaking around again." Knowing that Melinda has an anger management issue, for to put it mildly, she shows Melinda Diana's wallet, which has her ID and everything. And Melinda just goes fucking nuts. And so there's a scene where Robert comes home and he not only turns down the $800,000 lowball offer, he not only tanks his brother-in-law's delivery business, but he meets all of them inside their house. And Taraji P. Henson is sitting there just silent, just seething with anger and rage and insanity. And Robert is just pleading with her, pleading with Melinda, please, you got to understand, I turned down this money because it's not a good offer. I believe I can get something better. I'm so close. And Melinda is like, you turned down $800,000, knowing that could have paid for my mama's house that she left me, knowing that I spent all this money on you for your hopes and for your dreams while I'm out there busting my ass in that office job. And then she just turns and looks at Robert dead in his eye, a deep drag of the cigarette, exhales and goes, you know I can be the motherfucking devil. And Robert is just like, okay, I'm going to pack my shit and leave. So Robert packs his stuff and he leaves. And Taraji P. Henson just flies off the handle because she's like, this motherfucker cheated on me again with the same woman. I'm going to get his ass. Oh boy. And fast forward a little bit in this scene. And Robert actually finds a better deal for his invention. He manages to sell his invention, or he manages to sell his invention while managing to keep the intellectual rights for his invention for $10 million. I think it was like $80 million or something like that. It was basically like almost close to $100,000, basically. Like I think it was $75 million. So Robert finally gets a much better deal for his battery invention for $75 million. And so there's a scene, fast forward to some time after Melinda and Robert, they officially divorce. They divorce, and Robert decides to spend time with Diana, who helped him get the job. Mind you, the same woman that he cheated on with when they were younger. That he cheated on Melinda with, rather. So there's a scene, fast forward to some time later, Melinda and Robert, they're divorced. Robert's moved on with Diana, but Melinda doesn't know this yet. So one day, Robert shows up at Melinda's job, and Melinda gets up and she's like, what do you want? And Robert's like, listen, man, I'm so sorry. I love you and I always will. I'm sorry that I couldn't be the husband that you wanted me to be. So I know you spent 20 years of your life, believing in me, investing in me, investing in my hopes and dreams. So here, this is for you. So Robert gives Melinda a check of $10 million and the deed and keys to her mother's house. So Robert went out of his way to repurchase Melinda's mom's house, which she lost in foreclosure, gave the keys and the deed back to Melinda and a check of $10 million and said, thank you. I'm sorry that, I couldn't be the husband you wanted me to be, but I hope this makes up for it. Okay. At that point, if you get a check of $10 million from your ex, would you not take that check if you and your ex split on bad terms and your ex came back and said, hey, I'm real sorry that things didn't work out. I wish the best for you. Here's a check of $10 million. You would, if you tell me to my face that you would not take that money, you are a goddamn liar. And Does Melinda take the money? Well, yes, she does, but here's the thing. Here's where the movie goes straight into Crazyville, like it hasn't already. This is where it goes off the goddamn, starts to go off the approach the cliff, like Thelma and Louise. So the next scene, Melinda appears at Robert's new penthouse suite that he purchased, his new penthouse apartment, and she goes in there with a trench coat, and she's about to surprise him, with some sexy, lingerie, and she's about to show Robert the centrifugalness of her body, ready to like get it on, like hey, and like she's about to rekindle that spark that they had when they were married. So she's hoping to rekindle their relationship, and maybe they can remarry, rediscover their love. But wouldn't you know it? No, Jesus! Here comes Diana, who shows up in the apartment. Turns out that Diana and Robert are engaged, and she shows Melinda her ring. And then, and on top of that, she tells Melinda that she's pregnant that she is with child. And Melinda goes fucking nuts. She goes fucking batshit insane. Like to the point where she is stalking Diana. She's following Robert and Diana on Facebook and social media. Her social media handle, very subtle, is called Pissed at Life. Because that's very subtle, Tyler. Very, very clever. Her social media handle is Pissed at Life, and she's leaving all these malicious and threatening comments like, "Oh, fuck you, fuck your relationship, y'all ain't shit, this and that. Oh, I can kill you. I wish I could hurt you, this and that and the third." Just like leaving these horrible messages to the point where Robert and Diana, they have to file a restraining order against this woman, Melinda. And because Melinda has it in her head that Diana has my life. That's supposed to be my life. I'm supposed to be a multimillionaire, just like Robert. Robert's supposed to give me his money. I'm entitled to Robert's money. I'm entitled to his success. I want it all. I want it all. And mind you, she's not legally entitled to a goddamn thing because Robert got rich after they divorced. So she's not entitled to a red cent, but she gets it in her head that she's entitled to all of his riches and all of his success. And this is where the movie goes overboard, goes off the damn cliff, because she not only turns down the $10 million check, but there's a scene where she decides to take revenge on Robert and Gail. So there's a scene in the film where Melinda is inside her house, dancing like a crazy person, just dancing, underneath this red moon, underneath this red mood lighting. Because she has to be lit underneath red, because red is the color of evil. Red is the color of Satan, because that's subtle. Because we wouldn't understand that she's crazy and evil otherwise. So there's a freaking scene there's a freaking dance scene where Taraji P Henson, she's dancing like she's freaking Shinsuke Nakamura, just like doing all this stuff, and just like going like this. And I don't know if she's channeling Shinsuke Nakamura or if she's having a seizure, but she's just going nuts. And the film, and I'm going to spoil the last part of the film because it's a Tyler Perry movie. Don't worry about spoilers. So there's a scene where where she decides to take revenge on Robert and Gail once and for all. So there's a scene where she's trying to escape her house, but her sisters and her brothers-in-law get, they realize that she's about to do something completely effed up and horrible. So they decide to keep her trapped inside her house. So when she storms out the front door, her sisters have their cars parked way too close to Melinda's car, so she can't get out. So Melinda decides to storm off to the backyard to escape, but she sees her sister's husband sitting there in the back playing cards, chilling. So she can't escape their gaze. So Melinda, she sneaks out of the bathroom window on the side where they can't see her. And so fast forward to the last scene in the film where Robert and Diana, they're chilling on this yacht, this nice opulent yacht, living the good life, enjoying their riches, enjoying their child, which is on the way. So Diana's, she's in her early stages of pregnancy. They're looking at the starry night sky, which is horribly green screened. Like, I haven't seen that was probably the fakest looking sky I've seen in any film, in any modern film for that matter. So I guess they're in the middle of the ocean or in the middle of the bay or whatever. I don't know where exactly, but somehow, so there's a scene where so while they're on their yacht chilling, Diana decides to go downstairs into the bedroom, and while she's there, all of a sudden, Melinda appears out of nowhere in this white dress, and she's carrying a gun, and she points it at Robert. She appears out of nowhere. So I'm thinking in my head, okay, wait a minute. Question: how in the blue hell did she get on the goddamn yacht? Is she Aquaman? Does she have the power? Is she Aquawoman? Did she ride a dolphin all the way from the beach to the yacht? Did she teleport? We don't know. Did she stow away on the yacht? We don't know. We don't see how she got on the boat, but she appears out of nowhere, and she's pointing a gun at Robert, talking about, "You gonna give me everything that you owe me." And then she shoots him. She shoots she shoots poor Robert in the gut. And all the crew members on the yacht, they're trying to stop her, but then Taraji just points her gun at them, and she's like, "Jump, jump, jump." And she's like pointing the gun at them one by one, and one by one, all these crew members, they jump overboard. And in fact, there's one last crew member who does a full-on Olympic dive while going, "Ah!" like he waited his whole life to do that dive or some shit. And so poor Robert, he's crawling all the way to the end of to the rear of the yacht, and then Diana comes out of nowhere, and she ambushes Melinda and throws her overboard into the sea. And so Melinda, she's thrown overboard, and she's kind of like knocked unconscious, but the yacht is still going. And so Diana, she stops the yacht, and then she gets on this little boat to rescue all the other crew members that jumped overboard. And she manages to do this with no problem, mind you, in the middle of the sea where it's pitch black out. And I guess there was no visible flashlight. So apparently Diana has some experience in boating, because she manages to rescue all of these crew members with no problem. Okay. But while she's out there in the dead of night trying to rescue these crew members from drowning, Robert, he gets to his feet, and he's trying to make his way back to the front of the yacht. Out of nowhere, Taraji P. Henson just rises from her watery grave. She rises out of nowhere. The film doesn't explain how she managed to swim back aboard the yacht, and on top of that, she's dry as a bone. She's not even wet. She's not even wet. In the film. I don't know if oh my God. I don't know. This is the most blatant continuity error I've seen. This is where Tyler Perry doesn't give a remote shit about editing. This is his incompetence shining through, man, because she shows up on the boat, and not only is she not wet, she's no longer carrying a gun. She's carrying a freaking hatchet. She's carrying an axe that she summoned out of nowhere. Actually, she grabbed it from one of the walls of the yacht. And she's just dragging it right behind her, all shambling, just dragging it behind her like she's one of the nurses in Silent Hill. Just like all jerky movements, like, "I'm gonna get you, Robert, I'm gonna get you." And poor Robert, he's just bleeding out, and he collapses in the front of the yacht. Taraji P. Henson, she just chops him. She chops him with the hatchet, but the way but the way that moment was shot was just so poorly shot that you couldn't tell what happened. You couldn't tell if she chopped off his foot like Kunta Kinte or decapitated him. Nothing. It was like the camera. It was so poorly framed, and on top of that, you had CGI blood that looked like the spray can effect from Microsoft Paint. And so right after she slashes him with the hatchet, she somehow gets her foot caught in the anchor chain, and the anchor chain just suddenly whoop, just slides overboard along with the anchor and along with Melinda, who gets dragged underneath the sea, and she drowns, and she's just hanging at the bottom of the sea like a crazed porcelain doll. And then the whole movie ends with Gail and the crew members coming back on board and looking after Robert and tending to Robert, and then the movie just ends. Cut to credits. We don't know if Robert survived. We don't know if he died. The movie just cuts to credits as soon as Taraji P. Henson gets dragged underground under the sea and dies a really gritty death. Okay, I realize that I've spent the better part of a half hour breaking down this whole movie for you. Ask yourself, did anything that I've just said, did anything I said make any sense whatsoever? If the answer is no, then I don't blame you, because this is how the movie was written. I gotta say, Acrimony was freaking terrible. But you know what? It's just, I think it's the funniest and craziest unintentional comedy I've seen since Temptation, Confessions of a Marriage Counselor from Tyler Perry like 5 years ago. This movie was complete bullshit. It was completely awful. But you know what? I had a lot of fun watching this movie because I had a lot of fun laughing at it and just watching just how incompetently made this movie was. In fact, I watched it with my girlfriend and her mom and her brother, and we all had a jolly good time watching this movie. In fact, what made this movie even better was there was some guy in our screening, and you know what? Big ups to this guy, because this dude provided some funny commentary throughout the film. So whenever some crazy shit happened, this guy would go, "Damn," or "Oh hell no," or "That bitch be crazy," or "I ain't gonna do that shit," or something like that. Like this dude, oh my God, yo, I would love to get my hands on the Blu-ray edition of Acrimony, and I hope there's like an audience commentary track where whenever some crazy stuff happens in the film, you just hear somebody on a commentary track go, "God damn, holy shit, yo, that bitch be crazy." Oh my, this freak, oh my God. You know what? I rag on Tyler Perry so much, and you know what? I think I'm losing my goddamn mind talking about this movie. Tyler Perry's Acrimony. If you've seen any Tyler Perry movie, you know what you're in for. It's way over the top, poorly written, just incomprehensible, inconceivable. But you know what? It's trash. It's trash that I enjoy. It was trash that I was thoroughly entertained by for all the wrong reasons. This is a movie where you should like Redbox it. When it comes out on Redbox Tyler Perry's Acrimony, call up your friends and have a bad movie night. This is a movie that was made to be cracked on from start to finish. Get your friends going, get some drinks going, get some snacks going, get some nice hors d'oeuvres going, and just go to town on this movie. Just crack on it, because this movie is just fucking nuts. It is insane. And I mean, and you know what? And you know what? As far as Tyler Perry goes, like I said, he's no Barry Jenkins. He's no Ava DuVernay. He's no Ryan Coogler. He's no Spike Lee. He's no Jordan Peele. He's no Steve McQueen. Okay? He is not on the level of black filmmakers in the black filmmaking pantheon. Not at all. He's not Casey Lemons. He's not Julie Dash. He's not a bunch of black directors I can name right now. But you know what? Tyler Perry, I think, has a place in cinema. I think Tyler Perry is a secret genius because Tyler Perry is a whiz at making the unintentional comedy. In other words, films that are meant to be taken seriously but end up being the most hilarious and craziest comedies you'll ever see from any director. So you know what? As far as the unintentional comedy genre goes, Tyler Perry is a master at that. So I salute him as far as that goes. So please, after all that's been said, Tyler Perry's Acrimony, it's in theaters still. If you have Movie Pass, then you might as well watch it because movie pass means that this movie is basically free. You're paying what, $9.95 a month, and you can watch all the movies you want in theaters, provided as long as they're not 3D screenings, of course. But yeah, yeah, yeah. That's all I'm gonna say. Tyler Perry's Acrimony, y'all. Oh my gosh. Okay, so not that I've thoroughly lost my mind. Eddie Ortiz says, yes, it is a great comedy movie, and I bet that's the last Tyler Perry movie I watch. Well, maybe. I definitely will not watch any Medea movie. That's for sure. Because with Medea is way too, just way too annoying and irritating for my tastes. But any non Medea Tyler Perry movie that's in the same level as Acrimony or Temptation, I'll be there. I will definitely be there. So yeah, man. That about does it for Victor's Corner this week. Like I said, Carl is attending SmackDown Live, so hopefully you'll have fun there, my friend, as well as some of the other members from the Wrestling Fantasy Warfare group on Facebook. Hopefully you guys will have a great show. I'll be tuning in tonight via cable. Hopefully, like I said, tonight's SmackDown Superstar Shakeup will yield some better picks this time because, like I said, SmackDown had the short end of the stick last year. Hopefully, it's a different case this time around. And yeah, I was gonna leave with a question of the week, but Carl's usually good at coming up with questions of the week on the fly. But let me think of a wrestling related one since we're talking about the shakeup and and all this. Oh, okay. Here's a question. Question of the week for all of our wrestling fans. Which wrestler do you think is the most underutilized in the WWE on the main roster? So whoever that is, let us know as far as question of the week goes. Who could be used better on the main roster in the WWE? My answer to that question is Becky Lynch. And like I've said before in the podcast, Becky Lynch is criminally misused on the main roster, whether she's on Raw or SmackDown. I think if I was booking it, I would have Becky Lynch be a top level champion. I would have her be like the woman to beat next to Asuka, and then like you can have Becky build this like great win streak, and she recaptures either the SmackDown or Raw Women's Championships, and then she just goes on a tear, just beating wrestlers left and right, and then you can have like an awesome match between her and Asuka for the Women's Championship, and I think that could definitely bring Becky Lynch and Asuka to that upper echelon. I feel so. Definitely Becky Lynch. She needs to be used way better than she is now. But whatever your question, whatever your answer to that question is, let us know in the comments below or whenever the question of the week pops up. Like I said, thank you so much for tuning in on Victor's Corner this week. Next week, we will have the Codex Prime podcast back again for another episode. And you can always find our episodes on Facebook Live, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube as well. Also drop a 5-star review when you get the chance on iTunes. And you can also follow us on social media via Twitter at Codex Primecast and Instagram as well. Thank you so much for watching. I am Victor Omoayo, and I will catch you on the flip. Peace out, nerds.